Welcome to the Texas Parole Master Class. I am Sadiq. I want to make something clear before we go on. First, I will be using the word LO, and it means loved one. Majority of people know this, but there will always be someone who does not, so I mentioned it in the beginning. So no one is left behind. Next, many of you found this course through social media, and I need you to know that I do not have a license to give you legal advice, and this course is only for learning. I created this free course because too many people are being scammed by fake parole help online. No one should be paying for information that is already free from the state of Texas. Everything I share in this course can be checked and confirmed on the official TDCJ website. Please remember, I cannot promise any results or influence any parole decision. My goal is to help you understand the process, stay safe, and teach you what you can do from out here. On the TDCJ website, it says, the Board of Pardons and Paroles has been made aware that some parole services are being offered for a fee on social media websites by those who are not licensed and registered attorneys in the state of Texas. Such services being offered may include the preparation of a parole packet, preparation of letters of support, along with how to contact the board. The Texas Government Code 508.083 is very specific in that a person who represents an inmate for compensation must be a licensed attorney in this state and must first register with the parole division. Before engaging with an individual or company regarding parole services, please be cautious and ensure that they are a licensed attorney and registered before committing any money. The Board of Pardons and Paroles allows for support information to be submitted prior to a parole consideration. A specific format is not required, nor is a parole packet. Attorney representation is not required to submit information. Additionally, the offender during the parole interview is provided the opportunity to present release and employment plans along with any other support information. To make this simple, families are being scammed. The only people who can speak for your loved one during parole are licensed attorneys who are registered with the state. Anyone online asking for money or promising parole is lying to you. No one can guarantee parole. That decision belongs only to the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles. I created this free course to protect families from being taken advantage of. You do not need to pay for basic parole information. Everything you need to learn can be found on the official TDCJ website, and what I share here comes straight from there. And below is a link that goes to the TDCJ website where this board news is titled Submission of Parole Information and Attorney Representation. This course is designed to provide a simple online training that can help you or your loved one put together a packet of information which you can send to the Board of Pardons and Paroles so you can take part in convincing them that your LO has support and will not be a danger to society. It does not offer legal advice and cannot take the place of a competent attorney who knows and has a license to give you legal advice about the parole process. If you can afford a parole attorney, it will be in your best interest to hire one if you feel like you need one. If you can't, this course provides simple instructions on how to get the information you need to create the parole packet yourself and to send it to the right location. I made my own and I made my first parole, but doesn't mean your LO will. The information in this course can change at any time because the law can change and TDCJ and the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles can come up with new policies. Keep this in mind while you watch this training. Welcome back, everyone. I am an author, fitness, and breathwork instructor, and the founder of Reflective Identity Crafting, which is an education platform created to help families who have someone in prison and needs mental and emotional help. Before we start, I want to share something personal with you because I did not learn what I teach by being in a classroom. I earned it through pain, through deep thinking, and by searching for answers when I lost it all. When I was 20 years old, I was facing 5 life sentences. I ended up serving 10 and a half years in prison, but I was not the only one serving time. My mother was serving time too, not in a cell, but in her own mind. While I was trying to survive the noise and the chaos inside those walls, she was trying to survive the silence that came from being lonely and not having anyone to turn to. It filled her with guilt, anxiety, and too many sleepless nights. I found a way to deal with my cell when I learned breathwork, meditation, and the power of journaling, but she was pumped with medication that eventually took both of her kidneys. That broke me in a way prison never could. It showed me something that a lot of people never see. Prison does not just destroy the person inside, it breaks the family outside. That is why I created this platform. I came home to a broken home, one filled with pain, exhaustion, and silence. And I realized my mother's suffering was not unique. Families all over the world, just like yours, are carrying the same pain. Mothers who cannot sleep because they replay every what if. Fathers who hold it together for everyone else but are falling apart inside. Grandparents who are raising another generation and praying for strength. The list goes on. They live in survival mode every day while showing up for work, for their kids, and for their loved one inside, and no one shows up for them. That is why I built reflective identity crafting. It is not just to teach families about parole, it is a place to find healing, systems that give families like yours a place to finally breathe, learn, and release what has been weighing them down. Now, before we go deeper into this masterclass, I want to talk about something that a lot of families end up relying on, which is Facebook groups. That is where many of you first go for help. You search for answers, hope, or just someone who understands what you are going through. But what usually happens, you post something from the heart, something real, and instead of finding comfort, you end up with rude or disrespectful comments. People twist your words, act like experts, or make you feel small for simply asking for help. And that right there is what keeps so many people silent. They stop posting or stop sharing because one bad comment can make you feel like your pain does not matter. I have seen it, and I know that silence, the one that makes your chest feel tight and makes you feel like no one will ever really understand you. But the truth is, Facebook was never built for healing. It is loud, it is chaotic, and when you are carrying this much pain, the last thing you need is more noise. That is why I started creating something different, something that filters out the people who do not get it, something that can guide you to find peace, deal with emotions, stress, and be a part of a supportive community where you will not be judged, a place where you can find help and learn how to deal with emotional and physical pain, how to manage stress before it breaks you, how to breathe through anxiety, and how to let go of guilt without losing yourself. What I have built will have live meetings online so you can share how you feel around people who will not judge you. This private digital community is designed for families who need more than comments and chaos, a space built for growth, learning, and real emotional healing. It is available on an app so everything can be done right off your phone. Families dealing with this pain do not just need information, you need transformation. And my mission is to bring it to you so we can all contribute to something bigger, a vision of a future where the struggle is worth it. With that said, go ahead and start Module 2, the beginning of the official Texas Parole Master Class. Welcome back. We are starting Module 2, which explains the parole process. Before we can build a parole packet or write a single support letter, we need to start with understanding how parole works in Texas. When you understand each step, you start to see where your voice, your effort, and your support can make a real difference. This module is all about helping you see the full picture from who makes the decisions, when the reviews happen, and what your loved one and your family can expect along the way. Here's what we'll go through together in this module. Lesson 1, Understanding Parole in Texas. We will start with the basics by explaining what parole really is, who is in charge of it, and how the review process works from start to finish. Lesson 2, Parole Eligibility. You'll learn when someone becomes eligible for parole, how good time and line class affect that, and why their behavior inside really matters. Lesson 3, types of release. We will go over the 4 ways someone can leave prison and the difference between them. Lesson 4, parole guidelines. This lesson walks you through how the parole board scores and evaluates each case using risk levels, behavior, and severity to guide their decision. Lesson 5, approval and denial reasons. In this lesson, you will learn the reasons parole can be granted or denied straight from the TDCJ website. Lesson 6, parole panel voting options. Here you will learn how to understand the different vote codes from FI1 to NR and what they mean once you see this decision online. Lesson 7, full board parole decisions. Covers the special cases that requires a full vote from the board to make parole. Lesson 8, parole panel review FAQ. Will answer questions families have about the parole panel, from who can ask for interviews, what to expect during review, and how to contact the board the right way. Lesson 9, Support Letters FAQ. This is an FAQ on questions people commonly ask about from support letters, and it's from the TDCJ website. Lesson 10, Parole in Texas Handbook link. Finally, you get the direct link to the official Texas Parole Handbook so you can always double check information for yourself. By the end of this module, you will understand the entire parole process clearly. You will stop guessing, stop feeling lost, and start preparing with confidence. Because the more you understand the process, the better you can stand by your loved one and the less power fear and confusion have over you. Together, we're going to make sure you know the system and how to move through it with clarity. Welcome to lesson 1. Before we get deep into how to create a parole packet, it's important that we first understand what parole really is and how the process works in Texas. Let's start simple. Parole means giving someone the chance to finish their prison sentence outside the walls under certain rules and supervision. But here is something most people don't know. Parole is a privilege, not a right. That means no one is entitled to parole, even if they have been well behaved. It is something that has to be earned and is decided by a group of people called the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles. Now, in Texas, the parole process is a team effort between two main parts of the system, the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles and TDCJ's Parole Division. Think of it this way: the board decides who gets parole, and the parole division helps carry out and manage everything once parole is granted. The board is made up of 7 board members and 12 parole commissioners. Together, they form what's called parole panels, and these panels are the ones who review each case and vote on whether someone should be released. A parole panel has 3 people, 1 board member, and 2 commissioners. To make a decision, at least 2 of them must agree. That is called a majority vote. For certain crimes, the law requires a vote of 2/3 of the entire board members for parole to be granted. Now let's talk about how the review process works. About 6 months before someone's first chance at parole, the TDCJ Parole Division finds out who is eligible for review. If it is a later review, meaning they are coming up for parole again after being denied the first time, the review happens 4 months before the next review date. Once that is done, the person's case file is pulled. This includes their record, behavior, and everything they've done since being locked up. Then an institutional parole officer goes to the unit and does a short interview with the person in prison. That officer then writes a case summary for the board to review later. If your LO ever goes through this, remind them to be respectful, stay calm, and speak honestly during the interview. That moment matters. I have met people that went to the interview with no sense and talked to them crazy, then came back to tell us all the details like it was cool. Just being able to go in there with common sense will help your LO stand out. Here are other things to keep in mind when parole becomes an option. The victims of the crime, their families, and certain justice officials get a notice. This gives those who are registered on the confidential victim notification system the chance to share their thoughts either in support of or against parole. Victims can even request an interview with the board if they wish, but, and this is important, inmates do not automatically get the right to meet with the parole panel. The board decides if they will allow a meeting with the inmate, their family, or supporters. So not everyone gets to speak directly to the panel. The Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles does not hold in-person hearings for parole. The parole panel members vote on case files individually. After all the information is collected, the case file goes to a specific voting board office. Each board office handles a group of prison units. That means the prison the inmate is on will have an assigned voting board office. That is where the parole panel reviews everything from the conviction itself to how the person behaved in prison to their education and even their mental and physical health. The panel members take turns voting. If the first two votes agree, that is the final decision. If they disagree, a third member breaks the tie. Once the votes are complete, a letter will be sent to the offender with the panel's decision. If parole is denied, the board must set a next review date. That means they will decide the next time the inmate will be able to make parole. The waiting time depends on the type of crime. It could be 1 year or up to 5 years or even 10 years for very serious cases. If parole is granted, the person might still have to meet special conditions like programs, classes, or restrictions they must follow once they are released. So, in short, parole is a process. It is not random, it is not instant, and it is not guaranteed, even with a parole attorney. It is a step by step review where every case is looked at by real people and your LO's behavior, growth, and attitude does matter. Understanding this process helps you manage expectations, and it also shows you where your support can make the biggest difference. Because when you understand the system, you can stop guessing and start preparing. Here's a quick recap of the process. The Parole Division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice looks at people in prison 6 months before their official date if it is their first time coming up for parole, then pulls up their case file so it can be reviewed. If they get denied, they will from now on bring the inmate up 4 months before their date. Next, they notify trial officials, victims, and victim family members that you are being considered for parole. Then an institutional parole officer of the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles does an interview with the inmate and prepares a parole case summary for the board. An interview with the offender is at the discretion of the parole panel member. So are interviews with anyone else, except for interviews with victims, since by law they must be interviewed if they request it. Once your LO's file is sent to the designated board office, the parole panel there will review it, then vote on it. A panel has 3 voting members, and a majority of 2 votes will decide to grant or deny parole. To make it simple, one panel member will vote yes or no, then pass it to the next panel member. If the first 2 votes are the same, the vote is final. If the first 2 votes are different, the third panel member reviews the case and breaks the tie with their vote. Then they will let the inmate know of the parole panel's decision. A denial will include the next review date. If they make parole, they will let them know if they will be released without having to do a program while still in prison and any special conditions they must follow while on parole. In the next lesson, we will talk about eligibility, when and how your loved one comes up for review, and what you can start doing right now to be ready when that moment comes. Before we talk about packets and letters, we need to answer one big question. When is your LO even allowed to be looked at for parole? Parole eligibility does not mean they will be released. It means the board is allowed to review the case and decide on whether someone can be released. Parole is a privilege, not a right. It must be earned. We need to go over what sets the eligibility date so things get a bit more clear. Your loved one's eligibility date is set by the law and depends on when the crime happened, also the law at that time, what the crime was, since it will determine how much time you must do before being eligible, how much time did they get, how long they have been gone, and the good time they earned inside, which is also called good conduct time. All inmates get it, but only certain charges can use it to come up earlier than their set date. Some of these words can get confusing, so I am going to explain what good conduct time is and what is a line class. Good conduct time credit is called good time. It is time they give to an inmate for good behavior, work, and programs they took while in prison. The good time credits plus the amount of time the inmate spent while in prison can add up to the total time they got in court and can bring them up for parole or mandatory supervision earlier, but this is only for certain crimes. Let's say your LO got 20 years and did 8 years and got 12 years of good time for good behavior. It is equal to 20 years. Your LO can be brought up for parole. For certain crimes, the credits do not bring you up early, even though they get it and will come up for parole on their set date. And the law that was in place at the time they committed the crime will decide the date. How much good time they get is based on their line class. When an inmate is processed into TDCJ, they give them a line class, and that decides the amount of good time that inmate can earn for their behavior and for completing certain programs. The amount of good time they can earn is set by the law. There are three line classes: line 1, line 2, and line 3. Line class 1 can earn the most good time. Line class 3 earns the least. There are also state approved trustee status that goes from SAT 2 to SAT 4. If an inmate gets caught breaking rules in prison, they will have to go to a hearing and can lose all or part of their good conduct time they earned or put any or all of their good time in suspension. Good conduct time lost is credits they cannot get back. They can get back good conduct time in suspension. TDCJ does have the option to restore good conduct time forfeited on a revocation that does not involve a new criminal conviction after 3 months of good behavior. Any or all good conduct time can also be forfeited if the inmate tries to contact the victim or the victim's family directly, indirectly, or file a frivolous lawsuit. By now, you should understand how an inmate becomes eligible for parole and what they need to do to have as many things as possible in their favor so they have a better chance at going home early. They need to make sure they do not lose their line class so they get the most good time they can get, even if their crime does not allow them to use their good time to come up earlier than their set parole date. In lesson 3, we will go over the types of release and how they are different. Okay, so there are four types of release: mandatory supervision, discretionary mandatory supervision, medically recommended intensive supervision, and direct discharge. Let's start with mandatory supervision, which is a type of release from prison for crimes committed on or after August 31st, 1977. Mandatory supervision at that time was a set date and did not need a vote from the parole board, and the inmate was released. This doesn't include life sentences. For crimes committed between August 31st, 1977 and August 31st, 1996, the parole board released inmates to mandatory supervision when the amount of time the inmate has been in prison plus the accrued good conduct time equals the total time they received in court. Let me give you an example. Let's say your LO got 20 years and did 8 years and got 12 years of good time for good behavior. It is equal to 20 years and will be released. Not all crimes were eligible for this, so keep that in mind. Mandatory supervision became discretionary for crimes committed on or after September 1st, 1996. For crimes committed on or after September 1st, 1996, the parole board has to vote on discretionary mandatory supervision for inmates whose good conduct time plus their actual time they spent in prison equals the total time they received in court. The board has the discretion to grant or deny parole if they believe the inmate would be dangerous to the public. Certain crimes will not be brought up early, even if their good time credit plus the time they spend in prison equals the total time they received in court. Your LO should know exactly if their crime does or does not, since inmates talk about it all the time. In special cases, there is medically recommended intensive supervision, which allows early parole review and release for specific inmates who are older, intellectually disabled, terminally ill, physically handicapped, require long term care, or have a mental illness. With approval from the parole panel, inmates who fit in any of these categories can be released to the medically recommended intensive supervision program. The type of crime and criminal history will also decide if an inmate can get this special type of release. The other type of release is direct discharge. This is when inmates do their whole time day for day and gets released. These four types of release are based on when they got their time and have their own set of rules. Lesson 4 will explain what the parole board goes by to make those decisions. In this lesson, I'm going to explain guidelines the parole board uses to come up with a score that decides whether they will grant someone parole. The rules look fair on paper, but when they are used, they seem unfair. People with the same score can get very different results. Some make parole and some don't. The guidelines they use has two major parts which together make a single score. The first is the risk assessment instrument, which has both static and dynamic factors, and the second is the offense severity class. The risk assessment instrument has two sections, static risk factors and dynamic risk factors. An offender can be assigned 0 to 10 points on the static factors and 0 to 9 points on the dynamic factors. A low score means there is a low risk of the inmate coming back. The higher the score means that there is a higher risk of the inmate not to complete parole and to come back. This is something they look at, and how they calculate it is on the TDCJ website. Static factors are based on the inmate's past criminal records and will not change. Dynamic factors show who the inmate has become while in prison and can change over time, since they can take classes, rehabilitation programs, and even hold a job. Now, this brings us to the offense severity class. Every crime in Texas has an offense severity rating. The offense severity classes range from low for nonviolent crimes to the highest, like capital murder. If an inmate is in prison for more than one crime, the most serious active crime will decide offense severity class. On the TDCJ website, it says the risk assessment and offense severity are merged into a matrix that creates the offender's parole guideline score, and there are separate risk scales for male and female offenders. To make it simple, they have a chart they use to calculate the points and come up with a score. Parole guideline scores go from 1 for an individual with the highest risk of failing on parole to 7, which is for an inmate that has a higher chance of success while on parole. The guidelines do not automatically decide if someone will make parole. They are only a tool to help guide the decision. The parole board members still have the power to vote differently from the guidelines if they believe the inmate's crime is a reason to do it. The whole review process does not depend on the parole guideline score. It is only a piece of what they look at. During a parole review, they also look at how serious the crime was, how much time they got, how long they did, how old is the inmate's criminal history, other arrests, have they been in juvenile before, was drugs and alcohol involved, how they acted in prison, what their life was like before they went to prison, how the victim feels, how trial officials feel, what prison programs they completed, how many times they've been locked up, their plans if they are released. support letters and certificates they get in a parole packet. Below is a link where you can get more information about this on the TDCJ website. Now, this brings us to the end of the video training dealing with the process of parole in Texas prisons. The next 7 lessons have information from the TDCJ website, and each one also gives you a direct link so you can see the source for yourself. It has the approval and denial reasons the board can use, the parole panel's voting options, the options they have when dealing with a crime that has to have the full board vote on their case, and FAQ about the parole panel, and FAQ about support letters, the Parole in Texas Handbook link, and Texas Board of Pardons and Parole's rules link. They are separated into different lessons so you can find them easily and come back to them if you need to.